Oh no, another Skywagon. But is it a 180 or a 185? Oh, it's got a big tail. It must be a 185. Oh, it's got small lift struts. It must be a 180. Oh, it's got a 3-blade prop. Oh, it only says Skywagon on it. Okay, so this is going to be an interesting modification video. Cessna went, 140, 150, 152, 170, 172, 175, 180, 182, 185. This is a Cessna 183. And you might think, oh, I've never heard of a 183. Well, I made it up. They don't exist. But it's not quite a 185, but it's better than a 180. So it's a 183. So let's have a look at it and see why. So hi, this is Mark at Skywagon University. We haven't done a video for a little while because I've been inordinately busy. Plus, if somebody is watching this, there's a guy in San Diego who's got a late model 182 with everything in it, and he wants to bring it up here. And if you're watching this, contact me because I've lost all your details, and we want to do a video on that plane and all the benefits about it. We spoke at length about that plane, so call me on that. But today we're going to look at this Cessna 183. And of course it isn't a 183, it's a 180, but it's got a lot of things on it that would make someone think it's a 185. And I'm going to go over the details of it. And we're not going to fly it because we've flown them before and it flies like those, but I'm going to go over all the details of it. So this will be like a single video of talking about the model year changes and modifications to airframes of 180s to make them into 185s. Because 180 owners, after a while, they get a disease. It's incurable. It's called 185-itis. And the only cure is actually, there is a cure, is to buy a 185 or build something like this. So these are great. Let's have a look at it. So if this was parked on a ramp and your buddy and you're walking up to it and you go, look, a 185, he goes, no, it's a 180. The way to tell this plane is a 180 for 100% sure is it's got all the 185 giveaways on it, but the 185 under here has got a cooling scoop for an electric fuel pump, and the 180s don't have it. Well, this doesn't have it. It doesn't have a cooling scoop, so it's a 180. So everything else says it's a 185. But that would be the ramp giveaway, unless of course it's written on it to say if it's a 180 or 185. So let's go around and start at the back. So remember, 180s all have small tails and 185s all have big tails. I've done this in other videos, but I'm going to go over some of the detail. Quite a few people have said they like the deep dive. 180s, they all start here. 180s, generally, the dorsal fin does this, and it's only that tall. 180s with float kits, 1975 to 1981 inclusive, have the big fin on them. So they, it's P factor, rudder, it's just the way on floats they thought it would be better. So 75 and 76 or 180Js, they have the big fin and they have the car fuel capable low compression 470, which is 7-to-1 compression. And then the 77, this is a 77 180. The 77 to 81 180s with float kits all have the big fin. So if you see a 75 or newer 180 with a small fin, it does not have a float kit. We won't go into float kit because there's another video on that. All the other indications of float kit are on this plane, but that means it's got the float kit, and at a glance that tells you it's a 185 when it isn't. It's a 180, but it's newer than 75. So if it has the big fin, you can get a Kenmore STC called the gross weight increase kit, and it gives you a 3190 pound useful load increase, and it's a little reinforcement that goes in here on the tail, and it ups your gross weight, so it makes them not quite a 185 but more than a 180. That's why I call this a 183. So cut. So another giveaway of a 180 in disguise as a 185 like this is the lift struts. Lift struts on 180s are the same as 182s. Lift struts on 185s are the same as 206s. So if you grab it like this, that is a 180 and a 182, and a 185 206 is about another 3/4 of an inch thicker backwards here. So even though this does touch when you open the door, they really touch on a 185. So if you were looking at it, you'd think, okay, yeah, that's a 180. Gear legs in this year are 750 thousandths. So that's 3/4 of an inch thick. 180s and 185s are exactly the same. All 185s had 3/4 of an inch thick gear legs. 180s went to 7, went to 650, 600, and they got thicker and thicker as they got newer and newer. But I think it's right in saying that the 73 180s, correct me if I'm wrong, and newer share the exact same gear leg as the 185. So this is exactly a 185. So the main thing about a 180 and 185, it's like if you're in America, it's like a Ford F-150 and a Ford F-250. Same truck, slightly heavier duty. The 185 has 70 more horsepower. The 185s are 300 horsepower at 2850 RPM out of an injected 520 Continental. The 180s are 230 horsepower, so 70 horsepower less, carbureted in a 0470 Continental. But because they have the exact airframe in this year, they're pretty much the same plane, you can put the bigger engines in. So what makes this what I call a 183, because it's not quite a 180, but it's not quite a 185, I keep saying that, is the 520 in it. It's got the 520. So it goes on the same mounts, it goes under the same cowling, it's not a big customization job, it's a carbureted 520 cubic inch. It's a 470-50, so it's 470 cubic inches plus 50 cubic inches makes a 520 cubic inch carbureted 6-cylinder Continental at 270 to 280 horse. So the 180s are 230 horse at 2600, wind them back. I'm not talking about U engines now, I'm talking about the general 180s. So 2600, 230 horse, wind it back, you're at 200 horse. The 185s are 2850 RPM for takeoff, or 300 horsepower, but who flies at 2850? So by the time you've gone back to 2700, they are 285 horse, and by the time you're back to 2400 RPM, they're like 230, 240 horse. So this is 270 at 2700. So this is pretty much a 185. And also, since we're at the front, 180s never had 3 blades on them. And this has one. There it is. And it's an MT, not empty, like empty not full. It's an MT, MT prop, carbon fiber, composite, 3-blade, very, very light. So this is it's very smooth, it's very responsive when you rev it, because there isn't a giant weight spinning out there when you rev the engine. It doesn't have to spool up like on a big 401 3-blade. The MT prop weighs less and is instantaneously revvy, and sometimes when you start them you can't swing them over a compression on a low battery and have the inertia carry it through because the prop's too light. So this is a very nice upgrade on this plane. So you got the MT 3-blade composite prop on the 520, makes it even more like a 185. So wings and struts, just little details. 180s have strut cuff fairings, the plastic fairings. 185s don't have them because the strut's bigger. But if you wanted to put them on a 185, which you can, you get them from a 206, and you have to modify this one a bit so it clears the door. But these strut cuff fairings will also say it's a 180. 185 wings and 180s wings in this year, like 73 and newer. So 73 would be J and K 180s, and 73 would be F, right through to the end in 85. So remember, 180s ended in 81, 185s ended in 85. They had the same wing from 73 and on, and they've got a camber cuff wing. It's the Robertson stole kit leading edge from Robertson, installed at the factory from 73 and newer. So it's a stole wing, and it's on 180s and 185s exactly the same, so that wouldn't be any separation from the two. This one has got VGs on top, so it's got a cuffed wing, vortex generators, big tail, gross weight increase, 520, 3-blade, float kit, long range fuel. So that's why I call them 183s. What else? Inside, identical. But 180s, not all of them have rudder trim. The rudder trim would be here. A little spool you could wind. All 185s have rudder trim. Some 180s have rudder trim if you order it. So if you looked in it, you'd think, oh look, no rudder trim, it's got to be a 180. And then obviously elevator trim is all the same. This would be the same. The V-brace, the float kit, panel layout. This is a 77. So since we're in here talking about 77. 77 is the first year of the late style panel. And by late style we mean a cluster of 8 instruments right here that are parallel and flat, and the yoke is slightly lower. The yoke comes out here. 76, the yoke would come out about here, and these instruments are a little bit more like this. It's still center stacked in a 76, but 77's first year of late style panel, cowl flaps move from here on the panel down to the pedestal. So that's the late style panel, 77 to 81, and 185's 77 to 85. So, and this is a unique year. If this, just as a little tidbit of information, if this wasn't a P-Ponk 520 upgraded engine, if this was just a regular 77 180, it would be the first year of the U engine, which is the 2400 RPM engine, and it's a slightly higher compression engine. So people like 76 180s and older if they want to burn car fuel, but if you've got a 77 or newer, it's 100 low lead only because of the U engine. But if you've got this engine in it, you've got the extra horsepower and it's 100 low lead only anyway. But that's the 77 to 81 180 panel. Small yokes, 8 instruments in a flat cluster, center stacked, and cowl flaps on the pedestal. So since we're here and the door's open and we're filming, I'll just show you this. On floats, people put bubble windows in. You can see this sticks out about 25 centimeters, 5-6 inches for the non-Americans. The bubble window means that if it's on floats and the door's shut and you want to look at the floats, you can. So you can look straight down without sticking your head outside. Plus it gives you a little bit more room on your shoulders. But interestingly, see how there are 2 latches? This is Cessna's latch, original. And you add this front latch, because there it is open like a normal window. But if that were closed like that and you're flying, the airflow rushing past the outside of the bubble sucks it out and you get this. So you have to have a front latch to keep your bubble shut. So just a tidbit, that can go on 182s, 180s, anything with this shape of window. Very, very easy to put in. So the tail wheel in early 180s, this is called the Stinger. A lot of people know that, but just for people who don't, that's the Stinger. It goes up into the plane, it goes about 3 feet up into the fuselage, and it's basically the spring for the tail wheel. The early planes had 3 different sizes, so when you're buying tail wheels you've got to make sure it's the right one for the right model for the right year. 185s all were 1 inch and 1/8. This is 1 inch and 1/8 because it's a late model 180. So these in the end became so like 185s that really just changing the engine makes them into a 185. But that is the 1 inch and 1/8 Stinger. The early planes are inch, and then there's one that's like just slightly less than 1 inch, and they're kind of bonded in there and you've got to break them to get them out. And since we're back here, no tail wheel lock. No 180s had tail wheel locks. 185s all had tail wheel locks, and you never use them on the 185. They only put it on because at the higher gross weight of 3,600 pounds, when they were designing it and putting in the bigger engine and being heavier, they thought it might shimmy, and then it didn't, but they've got it. So you'll see a little tail wheel lock mechanism on here, like a horseshoe with a cable up to the front, and down on the pedestal there'll be tail wheel lock. So you don't use it, and mostly if they've been on floats, 185s don't have them, even though they should. They're on the type certificate, because the water rudder routing for the cables to the water rudders is routed down the tail wheel lock routing through the fuselage. So when you take it off floats and put it back on wheels, you go, don't bother with it, because they never use it. So the lock has got 2 pins that come down and lock and keep it dead straight. And sometimes with lack of use, if you do use it, it'll stay locked. So now you can't steer. And to get it, so you land straight into wind, your tail wheel's locked, and you can't get off the runway, so you've got to use power and lift the flap, lift the tail up and bounce it around so you can get off the runway. So sometimes the tail wheel locks will stick on. But that's another thing about 180s. They didn't have it, 185s did have it. So that's what would give this away of not being a 185 despite it looking very like one. So this was Mark at Skywagon University. Captain Morgan, Skywagon, got to do it, sorry. Just going over what this plane is. It's, you know, if you get a 180 and you do these mods to it, you can make them into a 185, and they're not called a 183, of course, they're called a 180 with a big engine, but I amusingly call them 183s because they're in the middle. But I hope you enjoyed it. We do a lot of videos like this on different planes. I think we've got 160 of them online, and we're getting our podcast studio set up in the office now. So anybody who's got interesting flying stories, discussions where we could video that perhaps want to share them with people, contact me, we'll organize that. And if you like it, subscribe down below, click on the little bell for notifications, and See you on the next video.